Good morning, everybody. Make sure this is okay. And right here. It's your boy Gnostics. This will be take 3, actually. I had one interference, so now I actually have my flash on to allow me to realize, if the recording happens to stop in between. But today, what I want to bring to everyone is actually a book that I've been reading. And, I figured, for now I'd share it with a few, go over some of the chakras and, dissect it. So what I have here is called Awakening the Chakras, the 7 energy centers in your daily life. Actually, let me get my water because I want to, before I get started on everything. I already did 2 takes, so I already been kind of losing my voice this week. Okay, so we have Awakening the Chakras, the 7 energy centers in your daily life. It's by Victor Daniels, Cooch N. Daniels, and Peter. I'm not even going to pronounce his last name or try. Here's the cover so you all can see if the flash isn't, blinding everybody too much. Make sure I don't have my hands on that too much. But I like this book because whether you're on, a certain path, a certain religion, you view things from a certain spiritual perspective, or you're just a natural skeptic of sorts. And, it's like, what is this whole chakra thing that, people are speaking of? Sounds like one of those, imaginary things again. I mean, what are these wheels in the body? Because, you see these pictures and you're really, sometimes people just get basically a representation of it. And when I go into detail, I actually explain why that's important as well. As far as, having these as visuals and why they are aligned along the spine and certain other regions of the body, and where other chakras are located besides these 7 ones that they tend to show on a regular basis. So yeah, this book here, it gives you a multitude and variety of different ways, of understanding what the chakra can represent. Like I said, whether you're, psychological, religious, spiritual in sorts, or you just don't know and you came here to have a little bit of more of an understanding. So I'm going to get into this since, like I said, I've already have twice before this video. But I'm gonna skip the preface because I'll leave that up to all of you. As far as, actually, let me change this around so I can actually get a little more comfortable for you all and myself. Okay, so I'm going to get into the introduction. Like I said, I left the preface because, if you plan on, getting a copy of this book, you can go through that yourself. That's just a personal thing. But, okay, so the introduction. When we talk about chakras, we talk about everything, by Harish Johari. Why are you holding this book in your hands? Perhaps you think it will help you make personal changes you desire or deepen your understanding of yourself and others. You may hope to awaken dormant potentials or discover what can make your life more than what it is. These are ancient as well as modern goals. Eons ago, in the dimly remembered beginnings of orally transmitted history, various people aspired to raise their consciousness. One outcome of their efforts was a set of answers that has been passed through the ages, the chakra system. As they sought to live a sacred life, some ancient philosophers found that wholehearted work with the chakras can lighten the path of awakening. They recognized that observing and meditating on your chakras can help you know your inner self, ignite latent abilities, and create fulfillment and beyond worldly desires. The chakra system, a vertical map of consciousness superimposed on points along the spine, underlies many yogic practices. Its study can help a student or sadhu or you to tread a path that leads to lasting happiness in connection with the universal spirit of creation. So that's why I also said that I'm going to get into, why it's, superimposed along the spine, because we have what we call the bandhas, which are basically locks on the body, which are superimposed on the spine as well. And through the physical yogic practices, it allows us to reach certain attainments of and states of mind through, these yogic practices. I'll go into more of that as well, but I'm going to continue for now. What are the chakras? Just when and where the chakra system originated may never be known. Its oldest written records date from a 1,000-year period of forest-dwelling rishis' teachings as chronicled in the Kundalini Upanishad. Whatever its origin and age, knowledge of the chakra system has been passed down through generations by sage after sage. Sri Harish Johari openly transmitted its essence into Western culture. His classic work, Chakras, the Energy Centers of Transformation, is one of the most valuable resources on this subject. Johari taught that the chakra system is a representation of creation from top to bottom, from the highest to the lowest qualities of consciousness. The Sanskrit word chakra means wheel of light. Each chakra has a dominant function or quality and several secondary qualities expressively portrayed as vortices of swirling energy. Each chakra is connected with specific patterns and potentials of thinking, feeling, sensing, and acting. Each one is aligned with different consecutive points on the spine. The first root chakra at the base of the spine and the 7th crown chakra at the top of the head. Chakras are an ancient system of inner awareness and reflection that belongs to yoga. The aim of yoga is union with the source or cosmic consciousness. So, what it's saying here, when it's describing it being a reflection of inner awareness, there's points in our life where we have to realize when things are affecting us. I mean, whether it's financially, mentally, emotionally, these chakras are the representations of those points within yourself. So when you get in, per se, a point of your life, like say, whether it's a relationship or something financial, or you're just having some sort of an emotional blockage. An emotional blockage would be represented and depicted as your heart chakra, that heart energy. And that's something that you would have to do your own readings and find out the ways of working out how to open that. And I'll get on that in other chapters in this book, but I'm just stating generally as how this is represented as an archetype. And I'll come back to that and explain how these two things are going to be combined in the way that we look in things in our Western world. Okay, so it says, for yoga, it is the pathway to dhyana, or deep meditation, that can lead from finite to infinite consciousness. We all have a spark of this eternal flame inside of us. For the yogi, chakras are a system to realize this self. The goal of yoga is to be free of the tyranny and of the desires of the lower chakras. For those who perceive in following a yogic path at the end of Leela, the great game of life, it is said that that ultimately just one desire remains: union with all people, beings, and other entities in the cosmos. But most important, union with the one where everything originates. By opening oneself to a void of by opening oneself to the world of chakras, a person begins to consciously convert mental energies into spiritual energies, like a phoenix rising from the smoldering ashes of an obsolete state of mind. So let me actually reread that one more time. So because I want to go back in that for a second. By opening oneself to the world of the chakras, a person begins to consciously convert mental energies into spiritual energies, like a phoenix rising from the smoldering ashes of an obsolete state of mind. So basically what it's saying, you're using these ways of applying the change within your mind to be able to apply these things within your personal and spiritual ways. So if you're, like I said, if you're having this emotional blockage, what would you do to work on it? And why, and what is causing this blockage? Was it a past relationship? Was it something during your upbringing, some sort of trauma that you may have had within your family? Just certain things, like I said, that need to be recognized. And, you don't want to, you want to get past these things because, like I said, it causes that stagnation. And when wheels don't turn, and they become stagnant, it's hard to get them to start turning again. So it's these ways to start reflecting on our inner self and our inner awareness to actually apply these changes to the situations that it need. And, I'll keep going, but, I just wanted to break that down as well. And as Pilo Baba compares, or Pilo or Pilot Baba compares the energy fields of the chakras to gravitation. Gravitation is one of the most powerful energies in this universe, he says. To which chakra is your personal gravitation pulling you? That's probably where you need to work. And that's what I was saying. Like, if you feel that you're gravitating to something, like if it's being brought out through your emotion, or if it's blocking you from thinking in a certain way, then you're going to know where it is that you need to work. It says, he states that a self-realized person's life force moves freely through all chakras, so that their energies flow together in a harmonious way in accord with whatever situation requires. Most of us, however, have at least a few stumbling blocks related to the workings of our chakras. Learning about the chakras helps us on our way to self-realization. And there are many obstacles on the way. Knowledge of how these sensors affect us can help us move past them. So, and sorry if I'm not looking directly at the camera. I mean, this flash is a bit much. I'm going to have to adjust that in ways. But what it's saying, like I was stating before, finding these ways and these problems and working on ways within yourself to be able to find a way to be able to move past these and elevate beyond, because you don't want to be stuck on these points. You don't want to have some sort of emotional blockage that you'll carry into the rest of your life and the ways of your thinking. Like it starts to change you into the person that's not you, and you don't want to, get in positions where you might end up putting that on somebody else, or just affecting the relationships that you have in your life, whether it's a friendship, a family bond, or a loving partnership, and you want to be able to be ready, but you have to work on your inner self to be able to accomplish these goals. But continue. Let me get some water here. The sages who spread the knowledge of the chakra system established a systematic path for waking up to greater consciousness and freedom. They were inspired to help humanity remove the mental filters and blinders that trap the mind in restrictive boundaries and other time-bound illusion that society-dominant belief system labels reality. As we remove misperceptions, we become able to perceive what truly is real, both within and outside of us. Our personal quest begins to follow a psychologically and spiritually sophisticated path for transforming our inner spirit and our relationships with the world. Let me go back to that one more time, because I feel a way about it and I want to talk about that, but just in case y'all didn't catch that, it says, They were inspired to help humanity remove the mental filters and blinders that trap the mind in restrictive boundaries and other time-bound illusion that society's dominant belief system labels reality. As we remove misperceptions, we become able to perceive what truly is real, both within and outside of us. Our personal quest begins to follow a psychologically and spiritually sophisticated path for transforming our inner spirit and our relationships with the world. As our insight deepens, we can become more inwardly whole and outwardly wise and mentally free. So that's what I was saying just recently before this. You don't want to be restricted. You don't want to get in ways where this is really going to affect the character that you've become from the blockages. Sometimes, we'll look at things like, you'll get into another situation and you'll be like, okay, well, I'll close myself off to this. Or you just don't know that you're closed off to something, but you can't allow yourself to be open to another situation fully because you have that blockage. With that blockage, if you're not inwardly open, you can't be outwardly, is what they're saying, because you can't sit here and, maybe, like I said, try to establish something where that work has to be done within yourself first. And that comes in loving, like I said, relationships, family, just the way that you look at the world, and just opening these different views for understanding where these situations and obstacles are being caused within yourself. So, it's definitely, having an emotional, spiritual, and psychological approach to these things. So, okay, I'll continue though. Every account of chakras and how to work with them reflects the philosophical context within which it arose. A person whose practice in spiritual discipline may talk about the chakras in different ways than one who follows a psychological path. This book presents beneficial ways of using the chakra system that are accessible to people who follow any religious, philosophical, or psychological approach. But I explained that to y'all in the beginning, actually, so I'm not going to go into that really. But knowing that it is a spiritual discipline. Chakras and psychology. In the mid-20th century, psychologist Abraham Maslow described a hierarchy of needs, a map of consciousness not so very different from the chakra system. Maslow's hierarchy includes psychological and safety needs, which he also calls deficiency needs, and it also includes belongingness and love needs, and self-actualization needs, which he collectively labels being needs. So you have psychological and safety needs, deficiency needs, belongingness and love needs, self-actualization needs, and being, which he labeled being needs. And this is another way of what I was saying is, it's like this hierarchy map is a representation of the chakras, like how they say, it's still realizing where you're deficient and how and why that you need these to be within yourself, to become the person that you aspire yourself to be, not for anyone else but yourself. So of course, no such map is reality itself. It merely represents inner states of being. A semanticist, Alfred Korzybski pointed out, a map is not the territory it depicts, nor is a word, idea, or thought the thing it represents. Even if we know that, we may forget it and get caught in the samsara or maya, the world of illusion in which we mistake our ideas for the realities they represent. So it said there's no map that's actual. And we can even take that, even if we're not taking that map for within ourselves, we can have a map that's something like we're trying to travel. there's something that's not going to be in that map. There's things that are overlooked. There's things that we won't see, if you see what I'm saying, because we haven't gone there. The map can only show us what has been seen and what has been located. And it's still going to have what? Little places within that place. It's going to have more streets, more town. Like, it's just a way of looking deeper within the self. So there can be no actualized map. Western psychotherapy's dominant goal has been made to make people sane in the sense of being able to feel all right within themselves, to function in the world. Some psychologists, like Maslow, go further. They want people to feel truly healed in a deep contact with themselves and in satisfying relationships with others. So it's not about, per se, it's not about per se it's not being happy temporarily. It's making these changes. It's not even just necessarily being happy. It's being in a point of understanding of where you can find. Let me reread that because I want to put this in a certain way. Okay, so it's basically saying you don't want to have something in a temporary state of mind. You want to work on these ways of which it can actually bring about these changes permanently within yourself. You don't want to be happy temporarily. You don't want to be satisfied temporarily. And of all things, you don't want to have a temporary understanding. Because at least if you get the understanding down, if these things occur again within your life where it causes the blockage, that understanding will allow you to consistently work on yourself. So, that's basically why, these things are needed to be applied to our daily life and our daily living. But, I'll still go back to that at the end of the chapter. Okay, so the sages who created the chakra system had an even more ambitious goal. They saw society itself as crazy in certain ways, and what they typically call normal as a part of that craziness. Normal does not mean sane, it means the norm, the average. To be lost in illusion means that we often act in ways that are a result of mistaking our ideas and socially conditioned response for reality itself. We legalize ways for some people to become incredibly wealthy while others stalk the streets and hope to avoid starvation. Some of us are inwardly turned against ourselves and outwardly antagonistic towards others. That's deep. I'm going to read that one more time. We legalize ways for some people to become incredibly wealthy while others stalk the streets in hope of avoiding starvation. Some of us are inwardly turned against ourselves and outwardly antagonistic towards others. So it's that's why problems happen within ourselves. That's why, we find, people can find so many people in their lives that they feel like they don't get along with or don't want to get along with because you have that problem within yourself. So you need to find that so you can stop being that antagonist outwardly and become more fully fulfilled within your personal self. It's, because it becomes a part where it's a problem. We have these people so negative towards the world itself, and it's not always that bad. I mean, it's bad when you take it in away from your inner reflection and you're seeing that and you're feeling it from other things because you're using the law of attraction. You're getting back exactly what you're putting out. So, it's unfortunate that so many people wonder, why is this happening to me? Why is this going on in my life? Why are these certain people like this in my life? Why weren't these people like this before when I met them, but they're like that now? Not necessarily, because I put, people can wear a mask, undoubtedly, for quite a while. But there's other things that you project within a person that also starts to become a part of your reality because you're putting that out outwardly. So you're not making that change within yourself to allow these changes to make some sort of outlook within your recent and current life. So like I said, it's about not trying to bring these traumas and stagnations within yourself to actually make progress. So I'll keep going though. We forget that living in inner and outer clarity, kindness, and harmony is possible, since both psychological insights and chakra work can offer greater understanding of our personal hierarchy of needs their truth can overlap. Okay, I'll say that one more time. Since both psychological insights and chakra work can offer greater understanding of our personal hierarchy of needs, their truths can overlap. Each of us is surrounded by forces that dominate our minds and lives. As long as people have been on earth, we have been calling these forces deities. It is a way to express our amazement and admiration for the mysterious, beautiful creation of this universe. When we can experience this as filled with love and care, we call it divine. We try to express with this word our awareness of some transcendent consciousness that is being the game of life. We created forms for these divine forces to express their different characters. These forms are made by humans to get more understanding of the forces that are present in nature. When we can see the divine in them, we can more easily free ourselves from the desires that try to push us in harmful directions, away from the desires that we identify with so fully that they become the central motivating force that create the psychodramas of our life. One moment. So basically, as I always speak on, it's about, we turn these deities in something that are being worshipped, giving our outward energy towards. And that's not the way that it's supposed to and meant to be done. These deities are depicted to be archetypal representations and symbologies to use to make these changes within ourselves, the same way that the chakra depiction is showing us to work on our inner awareness. It's just about, like, if we're looking in ourselves to find these ways, you should be able to learn, especially in, the occult path or left-hand path, to be able to decipher what these images mean, to use them and embody what they represent to cause about that change that you need to get things done. And not doing these and taking them and giving them misrepresentations are what are causing the psychodramas within our life. And it's also saying here, because there's certain things that, when we don't address these situations is why they push us in these harmful directions. So because we're not able to be aware of them. And like I was saying about the law of attraction, we're bringing these things to us. And as it said here, it becomes the central motivating forces that create the psychodramas of our life. So another way of just reflecting on that, if you're already thinking here I already feel like there's something that is going on maybe in my life, my family, my relationships with friends, or maybe not being able to have and be open in certain ways, that may be affecting you. So, just start to take those things in mind, and also, just start to see, how you would already start implementing these changes within yourself. Because when you are able to bring these things about, and I start going into these chapters about, ways of working and bringing about the change within your personal ways and your chakras, and, or you don't even have to call them chakras. Just ways of changing the way you think if it's putting yourself in a harmful direction, but for yourself. And the ways you think for yourself to better and empower the way that you are and actually access your greatest potential. So, okay, I'll continue. Developing the full positive potentials of chakras lead toward more understanding of supreme consciousness and the divine. The divine can also be translated as the inexplicable. It can only be experienced. It is most profound. It is the most profound of all experiences. So this is basically saying, I mean, don't take what I say, don't take what another person says, don't take what your religion is saying. If it doesn't feel right to you, then it's probably not. But if it does and it feels like a correct change within yourself that you may need, then that's something that you need to personally realize within yourself and go about that within yourself to be able to make these changes. It's all about experience. It's all about experience. That's why another person, I mean, sometimes it's helpful if somebody speaks on behalf of their own experience. It can give you a level of awareness, but if it has never happened to you, then you can never really have that understanding of how it felt or how to necessarily go about it. You can only have that awareness and perspective of ways to look at it. Okay, so I'm going to go into where it says now chakra imagery. The images found in these pages come from an ancient tradition. They seem to belong to a common dream world open to everyone like a collective consciousness. It was part of Johari's contribution that he created a coherent system from a very complex tradition. To make the spiritual content of the chakras clear, he drew and painted visual images for each chakra based on ancient Vedic traditions. Much of the imagery here is based on his work. So as I was saying, like with the deities, they are basically the representations, like they're depictions of how we can look into the deeper parts of ourselves where we need work and how to work on them. It's an archetype. It's a way of looking at it and using that symbology to bring about the change within yourself and or embody what it represents. So, as I was saying with the whole deific part. So, talking about the chakras as a concept is food for the left brain, which likes abstract thinking. We also have a right brain that needs something concrete, such as a percept. A percept without a concept is empty, and a concept without a percept is blind. Words like chair, computer, airplane, and so on have meaning only when there is a concrete object or percept to which they correspond. If the visual depictions of chakras in these pages are combined with conceptual study, the chakras will become more meaningful and valuable. The descriptions of the illustrations are actually a story of a spiritual journey where deities play their roles in explaining how to use the chakras effectively. You hear that? I'll finish this and I'll go back to read that one more time. Chakras are not tantric or Hindu property. Although they come out of these traditions, they don't belong to any cult or religion. They are the result of a thorough study of human nature, which is universal. So that's where I was saying that it can apply to anyone. It's no certain way that you have to go about it. There's just certain ways that you will find that you may have to go into yourself to work on these to apply the change within yourself. So, like as I was saying, with the deities and the chakras, they actually combine both of these in one sentence. The descriptions of the illustrations, so what you see those gods and deities that are so-called or so being worshipped, They are the descriptions of the illustration. They are actually a story of a spiritual journey where deities play their roles in explaining how to use the chakras effectively. Okay? Now I'll continue from there. Each percept or symbol has its own story. For example, in the West, the seductive charms of Venus, the Roman goddess of love and beauty, never dies. Many believe that such deities live in a substratum of our existence. Even if we don't know some of the history of the ancient deities, we still pay heed to the lessons that they offer, such as preferring to get married in the lucky month of June. Since the Roman goddess Juno gives a special blessing to the bride who marries in her favorite month, or we can be misled if we misinterpret their messages. So, like I said, both. Like they use this archetype of Venus as the representation, the Roman goddess of beauty and love. So, if, you want to work with that archetype or that deity, you would take these things within yourself to apply that representation of what she represented in your daily life. Bring in more loving things, more things of beauty. You would look up something of this Greek archetypal nature and maybe use some of the things that this deific representation was offered by the people of their time that brought about the energy for that image in that time. But it was still an image, it was still an archetype, and it was still a symbol. And that's why, using that and, so much of the collective energy being brought out and people using the month of June to be considered the month of love keeps more of that energy surrounded around that month to give it greater benefit. It's not necessarily the deity that is blessing over you to give you that it's not the deity that's blessing over you to give you what you ask for. It's not going to give you love, but you doing something more in a loving month because of that collective energy by the masses who have done it for that period of time. It gravitates, again, the energy and the law of attraction towards that time of it, giving it greater chance and opportunity of hopefully being successful if you have found that partner who is the one for you. But I'll continue. That's for a whole nother topic. The deities and other items in the chakra imagery represents forces in us that we need to recognize. They represent things like breath, the gases in our body, the nerves, the sense organs, being awake, dreaming, or sleeping, ego, or intellect, and so on. You hear that? Dreaming, being awake, sense organs, nerves, the gases in our bodies, sleeping, breath, mind, ego, intellect, and so on. So the chakras represent all of these. So that has, like I said, various multitudes of where you may need to apply your work. Sometimes these are easy to perceive. Sometimes they are more subtle. We cannot see but still feel them, or we can only hear them like music. And there are even those that go beyond sensory perception and can only be experienced. As when we peel an onion layer by layer, and at certain points we will reach the center where it all came from. Okay? In the chakras, the forms of deities can be seen as an ABC of the alphabet. Once Once we understand that, we don't need to see letters anymore, but words with meanings. I like that. Actually, I'll repeat that. In the chakras, the forms of the deities can be seen as an ABC of the alphabet. Once we understand that, we don't see them as letters anymore, but words with meanings. Okay? You apply what the deity represents. You apply the word, the letters make a word, and you apply what it means for you. But although the words, as deities and their representations, they have similar representations, you see? Once Dada took us to the Daksh Mandir in Haridwar, he guided us through the temple, which was filled with images of Shiva and the 10 Mahadevas. At a certain point, he explained to us how Indians see these images. When they see an image of Shiva, they also see little symbols used in that image, such as the items that a deity is holding or the animal depicted with him. All of the symbols are connected to stories. In a flash of a second, the viewer is connected to all these elaborate stories. For Western people, that is not easy. It takes time to see and understand the different symbols that are used. So when I say, finding the symbologies of the archetype of, a form of a deity, I'm saying, it does take studying. Like if you see Shiva, you will see him with the staff. You would go into, what does that staff represent? That staff actually represents a connection to this world and the dream world. Just as if you were to look at Poseidon's trident in Greek mythology, it also symbolizes the dream world to this world and the connection between the two. If you see the sword or the axes, like the swords in Kali, seeing those also depicts the images of clearing obstacles, cutting away the things that no longer serve us. So it's a way of looking at the details, like the blood may represent something, the animals, the heads, the skulls, like that everybody fears so much from, this Hollywoodized programming and conditioning. Instead of realizing that it's the connection between life, death, and the present, and how us being here is a representation between the two, and we're able to connect here in life, but we're still able to connect to that death current that we are in and that we share with the spiritual realm. So, I'll get on that. I'm sure, like I said, if anybody has questions, I'll definitely go into that on another video as well. But, I just had to, elaborate on that just a little bit. It says, in a flash of a second, the viewer is connected to all these elaborate stories. For Western people, that is not easy. It takes time to see and understand the difficult symbols that are used. Because in our Western culture, we're so conditioned to the Jesus and the Mary archetype, most of all, or the deific representations of such. But we're not looking at, what they represent. We're not looking at what the cross actually is symbolic to. We're not looking at the halo being the actual representation of the Christ mind. The Christ is a level that is attained, just like Buddha is a level of enlightenment that is also attained over time, practice, and discipline. So it's not, like I said, this is not an overnight process. It really takes going into the detail to understand the representations of what this deity is. But in Western culture, most individuals, I'm not going to say we, because I've never taken that concept within myself. I'm fortunate not to have, had the brainwashed upon myself. But you know, I do see it, and I can see the programming after generation, and on, you know, and I mean, it's just about going back to the source and dating back to the ancestors. But you know, that's for another story. But in our Western civilization, you know, they have more of an issue of the conditioning and programming of having a deity rather be worshipped, rather than understanding what that actually is a representation of, and what it may depict on the pictures themselves. It says, in this book, we try to explain the different deities and their symbols. They tell a story that brings us to a place beyond sensory perception, words, thoughts, or images. The images represent concepts. Studying them tells us more about the depth of Indian or yogic or Vedantic spiritual knowledge. Or Vedantic spiritual knowledge, however you want to pronounce that. Because I call it the Vedas. So, through these connections, we can more easily understand and enjoy the path that the chakras are showing us. Once the message is understood and experienced, the images are not needed anymore. So, you know how to bring these within yourself. You no longer need any form of an image. It's something that is now within you, and now you can embody the representation of that image rather than having, you know, something that, you know, you're worshiping. You know, that's what an altar, you know, for some of us on this path use. We create this altar as a representation to gravitate the power of what it represents. So if you're trying, like I said, if you're representing, if you want the representation and you want to encourage a love current in your life, or, you know, bring that loving energy within yourself to be able to bring that upon others, you may have these, or to persuade some forms of love in your life. You may have these deities like Venus. You may have Aphrodite. You may have something as like Oshun. You know, any of these representations that you would like to use, you would learn to embody these archetypes within yourself. But like I said, you use these altars to bring about the energy of what you're trying to represent. So, you know, that goes a fine line between being conditioned to worship. Indian philosophy puts creation in a cyclical form, not a linear one. So it's cyclical, not time-based. It tells us where we come from and where we are going. Chakras are a story of the elements, earth, water, fire, air, and void, that are connected to our world of sensory perception. It tells us how the sense organs originated and how we can find our way back to what is beyond the senses. Okay? How this book is structured. The introductory chapters describe processes and perspectives to guide us in our inner journey. Actually, okay, I will actually go in on this part. Each of the 7 chapters from 4 through 10 deals with a specific chakra. They share a common structure. Each one starts with a sentence that sums up the chakra's central qualities and a relevant quotation from Sri Harish Johari. This is followed by correspondences in outline, an outline that includes the physical location of the chakra, key phrases related to its influence, links to astrology, days of the week, elements, and your sense organs. So basically it's saying, you know, like that it's going into from the spirituality to the actual elements, to space, the void, you know, to the actual days of the week, of which things are usually performed, and your sense organs, which are where they have effects on the body. Then a descriptive section, essence, tells what the chakra is all about. Next, a unique table of possibilities shows forms that each chakra energy can take. After the table, a section called the bright side, which starts with 3 or 4 line comments on gifts and strengths, followed by supported text. Then the dark side, which begins with a few lines about the issue and challenges, offers a parallel description of difficulties that can emerge in the chakra. Past Roots explains how problems related to a specific chakra may begin. So that's why I like this book, because it's not only just going into, like, people are thinking, oh, the chakras, it's the light. Like, no, you have to look at the shit side of yourself. Yeah, the shit side of yourself. You're not perfect. So no one's perfect. So don't come over here with this perfect. I don't really need that much work on myself. I think I'm an all right person. I'm like, there's something that we all need to work on. So this will get in ways of addressing. And if, like I said, if you already know, and if you're already there, and that's something that you've already been working on, then that's more that's more of a reason to just be able to apply yourself to these situations, and see how the changes in your life can be, and become, like, after realizing, like I said, that shit side of yourself, the darker aspects of your nature. It's human nature. We all have another side to us, and we push it to the side so much that we don't really get to really accept it, because we push so much of ourselves into being like, I know I'm right about this, and never giving yourself the possibility to be wrong. Granted, there is fact, there is scientific fact, but if there is not, if there's only things that can be based upon experience, then it can be opinionated. So, the next major section is titled The Body and Emotions Pathway, Feeling Tones and their Respective Chakra. Its first section, called Personal Transformation, suggests methods to realize the power of chakras, opportunities, and reduce of its obstacles. The second section, Relational Transformation, offers ways to improve your relationship with friends, family, lovers, and others. So, that's mainly don't get me wrong. Personally, I've never really had problems with, I guess I would say, friendships, but personally, I can address this shit. Like, I've had situations with certain family members that that it had to require work to be done within myself, either to remove them from my life because they no longer serve a greater purpose for my growth or my development. Also, but when it comes to more like friends and, networking, that's just something that, I've never really had an issue with. So it's like, personally, like, you really have to find, like, what suits you, because there can be different variables in your heart chakra that can be affecting. You can be like, oh, I have good friends, but I have shit relationships. Oh, I'm good with my family, but my relationship is not good. I can have good friendships, my relationship is good, but my situations with my family is horrible. There's different variations of how you can look within these internal scenarios to really see where you might need to apply some change. Then comes a section titled The Pathway of Spirit Imagery and the Respect... Oh, okay, hold up. Actually, did I... Oh, no, I didn't read that yet. There comes a section titled The Pathway of Spirit Imagery, Respective Chakra... Imagery in the Respective Chakras, in which Peter describes in detail the meaning of each other of the principal images in the beautiful paintings, that chakra given in the color insert and line drawing that corresponds to it. at this point, when you look at the pictures, they tell a story and you know what the picture means. Sorry, I mean, that ended like that reading. I'm seeing the spots from the camera flash, so I'm actually going to read through it so my eyes can readjust here. But the last major section of each chakras chapter, the practical tools for chakra work. I'm not gonna go into. It just says, basically encourage the self-discovery and meaningful connections with your chakras. As far as that goes, just ways of working it. So I'll move a little bit faster so we can actually go into, the first actual story. And like I said, this is just to bring about the introduction. So if y'all are, y'all want to continue on this, I'll be going into chapter 1 shortly after. But it says, after the chapters on each of the 7 chakras is a chapter on removing obstacles and then concluding chapter. The book also includes a glossary of important terms. With open minds, we honor your path and way of looking at the world. We realize that you are a unique and with your own religious, secular, spiritual, agnostic, or atheistic outlook, and that your own chakra work begins where it begins for you, not where it begins for anyone else. Mataji Narmanda Puri points out that you can only start from where you are. We only know as much as we know now. We have to take about whatever time it takes. Go on doing whatever you can do at this point because you can't do anything else. Enjoy yourself as you are and enjoy life. As we three work together. Well, okay, so it just talks about how, I guess it right here, like how they, came about the book, together. Like I told you, it's 3 artists, like I said, Victor Daniels, Cooch and Daniels, and Peter. Like I said, I'm not going to pronounce his last name. I'm usually good with pronunciations, but I'm not going to do that. But like I said, that's basically, that's just the introduction. So hopefully, for a lot, that can give most of you just a way of personally maybe reflecting on some ways that you may need to learn about the chakras, how you need to interpret depictions, illustrations, what deities actually represent and what they're used for. Hold on, I'm just trying to go back, making sure I touched on most of the bases. Basically, like I said, going into ourselves and realizing the ways that have influenced us in a positive manner and maybe in a more so negative manner. Like I said, if you're having issues with your family, your friends, your outer world entirely, if everything seems fucked up or not good, don't say, oh man, the world is, like this. Like it doesn't necessarily have to be like that. It's sometimes, like I said, our inwardness towards ourself, which is giving that outward experience through a more negative look, and you don't want to have that. You don't want to be in situations where it's affecting you in a way like that. It's really changing your entire life and not in a positive. So many people that I know was and we all know is like people that are like, hey, I wasn't always like this. I'm trying to change. I'm looking for a way to change. I'm now seeking a new path, spirituality, a new religion, a new relationship with God, but the God that's not within themselves. Looking for every external way to find a reason why besides looking in themselves. And that's the only way of where we can start. We have to start from the source. we have to get that union with source, which is the yoga. Yoga itself, is a discipline. Mentally, emotionally, it can be physical, but it's mental. And I say it can be physical because there's some people who are disabled, quadriplegics. And as a quadriplegic, you wouldn't want to think that you can't do yoga because it's more than just a physical attribute. It is nice to bring them all in a union of one, but if you're not able, you're able to expand your mind. You're able to expand your emotions. You're able to expand and stretch in a way that you didn't know. As a quote that I've heard from a movie that's always stuck with me, it says, "I can fly out of here on the wings of books and escape from here on the... I can fly out of here on the backs of books and escape from here on the wings of words." So, and that's actually, I quote that from the movie The Professor, actually. That's something that really stuck with me. And once again, like if you didn't catch that, it's, I can fly out of here on the wings, I can fly out of here on the backs of books and escape from here on the wings of words. So it's like, even those incarcerated, who feel like, you can't get to a certain place because you're stagnated in a physical sense. Your body is held, but your mind isn't. And there's so many of us, unfortunately, who are not in these disabilities, who are not in this incarceration, and we still put ourselves in a place where it's just stagnant. Like we're still stuck. We're still imprisoned in the reality that we're in today, that we're living in. And you don't want, it may feel, sometimes, granted, you can feel comfortable. But are there things in your life that you wish that you could apply to do more? You may be comfortable in your job. It may be what you love. There might be something else that you want to do on top of your job now that you're good and now that you're stable, but you're not pushing yourself as far as doing it. It's you may be to a point where you're not financially stable and you want to get to a better place and you want to find ways on maybe how you can work on it. Maybe you have an issue with communicating. Maybe you have an issue with networking. And that's a form of communication. So maybe you would have to work on ways of applying it to your throat chakra. Emotions. Maybe you're not allowed, like I said, or you're not allowing yourself to open to a relationship or all of these things. It's a process. It's all about bringing these things into one to not allow us to imprison ourselves within the reality that we live in. You might, like I said, you might have a good relationship, but what can you do to apply certain things to make it that much better for you and your partner? How can you elevate? What's the next level from here? Things may be great. You might be in a great position, but it's about consistency and not allowing things to stagnate. If you're good in one area and the wheels are turning, maybe that's the last thing that you have to worry about. If it feels open and you feel connected to it, then good. But, if you feel like you're like, oh yeah, like this is weird, like just reflect inwardly and actually take these changes in all these influences within yourself in mind and, take the time to reflect on that. So when I actually come back on these chapters, we'll work on, chapter by chapter on ways to, work on these, not only for you, but for me, myself, even being able to read it to you all. That's just a process of even working on it as well. It's like, you'll read something, you go, oh, that applied to me. And I can just take these readings to you guys and, it's still me bringing in these chakras and ways to make them move within myself. It's you're putting this embodiment of it, these symbols into a way that you can have a greater understanding of what you need to work on. So once again, I will follow up. And again, this is if you skipped to the end by whatever chance and didn't listen to it, it's awakening the chakras, the 7 energy centers of your daily life. I don't know if the flash is blinding, but once again, it's been real, and your boy Gnostics will go into another chapter. I hope you guys all enjoyed. Peace.